During the first years of the war, 220 factories, plants and artels were evacuated from the European part of Russia to Kazakhstan. Each 9th bullet out of 10 was made of Kazakhstan's lead. December 19th, 1941. There are still no letters from Dad. He probably has no time because of his fights with fascists. I told the same to my mother, but anyway, she's still sad. Everything changed a lot at home, as if the sun has been stolen from us and it is always dark. Mom said that it is necessary to save money and food, but yesterday I found hidden candies and ate all at once. Mom saw it and became so angry. I was scared and lied that it wasn't me. At night, I was very worried and promised myself, if I lie to my mother again, the war will never end. Alibek hosted guests from the place where the war was taking place. Living and sanitary norms were established in all cities of Kazakhstan. It was measured as 4 meters of space for each member of family, so this norm allowed to increase density of living space, and this way evacuated people could be moved in existing houses. Because it was impossible to build new houses in that period, so people were provided with living space this way. Assuming that the war will last long, on the 3rd day of the war on June 24, 1941, the Soviet government created a council of the evacuation of industrial enterprises, institutions and the population. Factories and industrial enterprises which produced military products were evacuated from the battle zone as the first priority due to its importance in military defense. The main reasons to make Kazakhstan an important strategic area of home front were distance between the Republic and the front line, the location of an industrial base that was established during pre-war years, the developed railway network, and a fairly powerful fuel, energy and raw material base. Dozens of enterprises were decided to be relocated here. The main areas for relocated factories were Alma-Ata, Uralsk, Petropavlovsk, Chimkent, Semipalatinsk, Karaganda and Aktyubinsk. One of the first factories that was relocated to the territory of Aktyubinsk was Mosrendgan. The first echelon arrived from the Moscow plant in October of 1941. During the war, this plant manufactured demolition exploders, PM1, PM2. Sapper squads and partisans used this machine mostly. Today, a terrible thing happened. In the morning before work, Mom, as usual, was stoking the fire in the stove. She was in a hurry because the work shift starts at 5 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly, I heard a strong scream. Mom mistakenly burned our food stamps. Now we eat what we have, and grandmother Tasia, who works at a meat factory, brings us blood that was put into a jar. Mom mixes it with cereal and fries. I haven't eaten anything tastier than that in my life. Since July of 1941, Kazakhstan introduced a food card system to supply population of cities, the population of district centers and mines with food. The rural population did not belong to this category. The average bread norm for citizens was from 400 to 600 grams per person. The highest norm of 800 grams was only for workers of factories and plants. The sugar norm was 400 grams per month. While the working hours in collective farms and state farms were increased and the production standards were enhanced, the workers had to complete agricultural works faster and still did not receive food. And meanwhile, during the years of World War II, trains were loaded with food and were sent from Kazakhstan to the front line every day. Agriculture of the Republic experienced an unprecedented growth. The harvest amount broke records. And behind all these successes were half-starved adults and children who worked very hard. The year 1941 saw a high harvest yield. When the war began, there was a lot of hype in our village. When my father and I brought a lot of watermelons that autumn, the military service request was delivered to my dad. I remember this day very well. Everyone was crying at home. I cried too. I told my father that I also want to go for a war. Well, we used to play in war with our toys. I thought it was the same way. We didn't know that time the war was scary. My mother began to produce fatter cheese on the collective farm. There were 2 flocks of goats in our village, and in 1942 my older brother and I began to work next to my mother. I will never forget those years, because all my relatives, all children had to work. 5, 6, 7-year-olds never stayed at home.
Они с матерями очень огромную работу выполняли. Мы забыли такое, что играть. Некогда было вообще.
They worked hard together with their mothers. We forgot what did it mean to play. There was no time to play because we had to perform work that children could do. As I told you, we forgot what it meant to play. If there was a possibility, we made a ball of wool. It was the only thing we played with.
Наши люди работали, не покладая рук. Высокий дух людей.
People worked very hard. The slogan, "All for the front, all for the victory," inspired people to work really hard. Even during winter, old women knitted stockings, socks, mittens and 3-finger mittens, which were convenient for soldiers to use. Most of the male population of the Republic went to the front. Women and children took their places on collective farms, state farms and machine tools. 88% of workers who served in the communications system during the World War II were women. 61% of workers at the Aktyubinsk plant were women. At the Oktober ferro alloy plant, 332 women mastered male professions, 80 women worked in smelters. This is the workshop where the furnace Komsomolka is located. The first Kazakhstan ferrochrome was produced there. Our factory was built in record time thanks to the dedicated work of teenagers and women. The first Kazakhstani ferrochrome was launched on January the 20th, 1943. It was used in the production of tanks, planes and other military equipment to protect our homeland. Mom works a lot. She gets very tired at the factory. I try to help because Dad said that now I'm the main man. Alibek and Vovka and I also go to the factory after school. We operate machines standing on boxes. When the machine overheats, it is cooled with cold water. Sometimes I get really cold and I'm always hungry.
такой же холодной зимой 17 ноября 1941 года было подписано постановление.
In the same cold winter, on November the 17th, 1941, the decree on the evacuation of the Voroshilov steam locomotive plant was signed. During 2 months after that, trains arrived here. It was cold in wintertime. That time there were only a few Almaty auto repair shops on this territory. Nothing was here. But already in February of 1942, the first products went to the front on these rails from here.
Продукция какая? Завод расширялся, стал называться с 1942 года.
The plant expanded. Since 1942, it was called the Alma-Ata Heavy Engineering Plant. They began to produce shells and mines. Everything for the front line.
Все для фронта. Здесь, на этом месте, с эшелонов сгружали оборудование эвакуированное. И здесь же устанавливали палатки и...
Here at this place, evacuated equipment was loaded. Tents were set up here, and our people started to work in tents for 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, in cold and frost. Since the beginning of the war, the whole republic was refocused on war needs. People were working in all regions of Kazakhstan. So Chimkent lead plant accommodated and housed the Podolsk lead rolling plant on its territory. The country launched the products that were necessary for the front needs in record time. That was made because of the dedicated work of the rear workers, thanks to people who were making the victory day closer by their own hands.
Мясокомбинат Семипалатинский фактически всю войну.
The Semei meatpacking plant provided food to soldiers during the entire war.
Они обходились этим мясом. Хлеб, который мы сеяли, который мы пахали, получали, шло полностью для фронта. Молоко, там масло, которое получали частники, тоже таким.
The meat, the bread that we sowed were sent to the front. Milk and butter were sent to the front too. Thus, Kazakhstan worked very hard during this war.
Я проработал 1,5 года в этом колхозе. У нас район предгорья Aktyubinskого хребта.
I worked for a year and a half on this collective farm. There is an area in the foothills of the Kalba ridge of Altai. As you know, Kazakhstan is very rich in minerals. There is a lot of gold.
В Казахстане, в нашем районе существовало тогда.
There were more than a dozen mines of gold at that time in Kazakhstan. This region is called the Golden Yertis region. I worked in Alma-Ata till 1944.
Я таким образом в старательской артели проработал до 1944 года, познал.
I knew all basics of geology. Nowadays, I'm a geologist, professor of geology, doctor of geological sciences.
Доктор геолого-минералогических наук, профессор.
Kazakhstan became the important part of mass evacuation of the Soviet Union in 1941-1942. In terms of scale and conditions, this feat is considered unprecedented in the history of countries and peoples.
Воскресник провели работники Турсиба и Вихтель. И знают патриоты, что оборонный склад даст бомбы самолетов. самолету.
All responsibility for field work fell on the shoulders of the people. We should mention first leaders of the Republic, under whose leadership the whole process was going on. The first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Kazakhstan was Nikolai Skvortsov. The second one was Zhumabay Shayakhmetov.
Когда читаешь об этом времени, поражаешься вот этой работе.
When you read about that time, you will be amazed by this hard work. Shayakhmetov was a member of the State Defense Committee of the construction of the Uralsk oil pipeline, as well as of collecting and sending warm things, scrap metal, to the front line.
Металлолома, то есть и когда немцы отрезали бакинскую нефть.
After the Germans blocked the Baku oil, the importance of the Yambi oil, or other name Guryev oil, increased. This was the period of the Battle of Kursk. So Guryev's oil was the fuel in the Soviet tanks. The development of various enterprises in extreme conditions took place in almost all sectors. The scientists of Kazakhstan played a huge role in that.
Что из себя представляла наука в Казахстане?
What did science in Kazakhstan look like? The facility of the USSR Academy of Sciences was opened in Alma-Ata in 1932. In 1938, it was transformed into a branch of the USSR Academy of Sciences. Kanish Satpayev became the head of this branch in 1941. He was a great scientist, organizer of science, a man who spent all his life for his country needs. Before that, he worked in Jeskazgan. At that time, nobody believed that any minerals could be found in Jeskazgan. That territory was explored by English and Russian geologists. They concluded that Bedpagdala was empty lands. There were no mineral resources, but Kanish Satpayev insisted that it was necessary to develop that land, and he believed that this was the richest region. And as time showed, that was true. Kazakhstan was rich in raw materials, coal and oil deposits, and in huge reserves of non-ferrous and rare metals. So the Republic became the main supplier of the front. In order to provide all defense enterprises with raw materials, it was necessary to find these raw materials. And to that moment, the western regions of the country were already occupied. So there was the issue to stop the work of defense enterprises. For example, such a huge mine as Nikopol, which was a manganese mining center in Zaporozhye region, was occupied. Ways to the Chatura field in Georgia were also closed. There was a danger that the production on plants would be shut down. Therefore, the role of Kazakhstan's geologists, led by Kanish Imantayevich Satpayev, was great. They came to Jeskazgan and began to develop the field. And manganese mining mine was developed in 38 days. Until the new railway line was built, 20 trucks transported the manganese mined to the railway every day and night. I have to say that the opening of the Zhezdy mine was included in the multi-volume books of the history of the Great Patriotic War in 1941-1945, which was published in Moscow. And as it was mentioned there, that mine played a huge role. It was like a great victory in one of the battles, because this mine produced 84.6% of manganese of all the Soviet Union. I woke up in the morning and saw Dad standing in front of me. I screamed and jumped out of the bed, and only after I realized that it was not him. Apparently, after the night shift, Mom came with a family from Ukraine. They are also going to work at the factory. Misha, baby Olya, Mom and Dad. I don't know where and how we are going to sleep all together. Mom said that we will figure something out. And we are already running out of firewood. We haven't got enough food. There is still a new year ahead. I look forward to it. Hope Dad comes back soon. Misha is so lucky.
Завод номер 175 имени Кирова.
Plant number 175, named after Kirov, was evacuated from the city of Tokmak in Ukraine to the city of Almaty. Over 12,000 factory workers, specialists with their families, 982 units of equipment arrived here. Along with specialists from industrial enterprises, civilians from the occupied western regions of the USSR were evacuated to the country. Trains with children also arrived in Kazakhstan and the republics of Central Asia.
Началась эвакуация, и тогда была идея тех детей, родители которых погибли в первые дни войны, первые месяцы войны.
The evacuation began, and then the idea came. Those children whose parents died in the early days, in the first months of the war, could be sent to families. And in order to set an example, Akhmetov also said that he would take one of the boys. He told about this to his wife. By the way, his wife, Mainur, my grandmother, she thought she would come and choose any boy. So they decided to choose their son themselves, but when they arrived at the station, wagons opened and the children ran out. They were poorly dressed, bald, and one of the boys ran to my grandmother and screamed, "Mom!" The family had already 2 more sons and a daughter by that time. And they decided to call their boy Volodya, Vova. Later they made passport with full name Vladimir Zhumabayevich Akhmetov, with Kazakh ethnicity, although he was Ukrainian and was born as Vladimir Malkov in 1938 in Kharkov.
Родился в Харькове.
Every Kazakh family faced that war, and all of us put our heart in this war, in this victory. And in order to educate our youth in the spirit of patriotism, we as the older generation must explain how this victory was achieved. The significance and important role of Kazakhstan as a strategic rare is undeniable. Each city, region, district of the Republic made an invaluable contribution to the victory. All 1,418 days of the war, Kazakhstanis worked day and night in factories, plants, workshops and artels, on collective farms, state farms, in fields and in mines. How the country experienced this period? Who are the people who gave us a peaceful sky? Looked for answers in the project Our Common Victory, to make everyone know, remember and honor. The boys of the unsparing wartime, inherited and drained to the dregs the cup of bitterness and loss, grew up at once. Wrapped up in winter coats, you came to factories to take the places of your departed soldier fathers, to work night-long at lathes and benches. On step stools, hardly reaching tools, with curly hair snatched under berets, turning bullets and shells for adults at the front, each doing own part to bring the victory closer. Still children, but taking the grown-ups' burden, a bowl of soup, a bar of soap, a little bit of bread, a bag of flour, the best reward for those withstanding cold and hunger. White-haired nowadays, unbroken as before, remembering its all and friends who died. Don't hide dry tears, let the grandchildren know the toll that fell on you, my dear wartime boys.